This happened last Thursday, and before you ask, yes, I told the cops everything. I teach a class of about 30 students on a normal day, including those who tie in virtually. I have a hard time keeping their attention, except when I'm talking about sex ed. So I knew that when the actual lockdown was happening, most of them were just going to shrug it off and not pay attention. They didn't realize how real the threat was. We have always said that we would be fine, but when that announcement came over the speaker, I don't think any of us were. And my job as their teacher was to keep them calm and collected as we left our classroom and went to our designated spot, a computer room a few doors down. The plan was simple. We would barricade the door while security roamed the halls and found the danger. I told myself that it was all going to go exactly according to plan, just like it had during our dozens of drills. It happened midway down the South Hall. As we were going in between the rooms, the roar of the air conditioner turned on louder than usual, and it made all of us stop to look. Then, some sort of strange purple mist was pouring out of the vents. It looked like a cloud of electric mist. "What the hell is that?" one student asked as it snaked its way out of the vent toward us. I knew that whatever it was, it had to be dangerous. But sadly, my students weren't as bright. One boy reached his hand out inquisitively and tried to touch the cloud. I watched as bolts of lightning coursed through his body and made him light up like a Christmas tree. It was terrifying to behold. And the lightning entered and scorched his bones. Then he fell to the ground, and all of us watched as the strange mist pushed its way out of his mouth and nostrils. It was alive. "Run!" I urged the kids as we made it to the computer room. I told a larger kid to block the door, and I got on my walkie-talkie to tell the principal what was happening. "We've got a problem in the south wing," I shouted. I was only greeted by static. Then the air started to roar again, and we realized the same mist was pushing its way into the computer room. We were trapped. "Out the window," I urged them. Suddenly, the strange alien cloud was moving faster, hitting 3 different students one by one. They fell unconscious to the floor in less than a second. Meanwhile, a few girls were prying the window open, calling to some of the kids down in the football field to help. But they only got a few words out before the cloud engulfed them as well. Before I knew what was happening, I was standing in a room of dead kids. The cloud swirled about, seemingly staring me down as I fearfully backed away to one of the walls. Then, perhaps full from its feasts, it dissipated. The cameras didn't show anything except the fact that the kids had mysteriously collapsed. The medical report said it was some kind of shock or heart condition, and some parents accepted that. But I know what I saw, and I'm worried that it's still inside our vents, waiting for the next drill to strike again. Ms. Shriver was just finishing a lecture about gun safety when she unlocked her closet and pulled out the strange-looking doll. It was about 5 foot tall, a genderless bland mannequin that looked like it had seen better days, with rubber eyeballs glued in and a wavy smile taped on. A few of the girls in the back of the class giggled at how silly it looked. "Class, this is Lockdown Larry. Now I know that he doesn't look like much, but he's going to teach us all about what happens when we don't follow the rules on safety," Ms. Shriver explained. Immediately, Bradley Colt burst out laughing right behind me. "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Is it supposed to be a CPR dummy? How is a mannequin supposed to help us?" Some of the other students muttered and laughed in agreement. It was a bit absurd, but our English teacher did not look amused. She grabbed her ruler and smacked it right against my desk. Her eyes seemed to convey nothing but pure rage. "Because, Bradley, if we are just as complacent as this dumb doll, as you call it, then we're going to be in danger when a lockdown happens. We all need to be aware of what our role is in," but she didn't get to finish. Colt just simply could not stop laughing. He was literally red in the face. And then Shriver got that way too, but for an entirely different reason. She was angry. She opened her mouth to say something else when over the intercom, an announcement was made that we were doing a lockdown drill. Then she smiled. It did not seem like a friendly smile. "Well, this is a perfect chance for us to all see what happens when we don't respect our rules," she muttered. Bradley rolled his eyes and crossed his arms as the rest of us got over toward the wall. "Class, I want all of you to head for the science hall. Bradley, you'll stay here and learn your lesson," our teacher announced. Colt just laughed again, but sounded a little nervous. I think we all were. Ms. Shriver was one of those teachers that you simply didn't want to cross. So the rest of us quietly shuffled out, and she stayed behind with him. We kept our heads down and wondered what sort of punishment she was about to dish out for poor Bradley. The bell rang about 5 minutes later, and it was time to get back to class. All of us imagined there was going to be some kind of lecture, and Bradley was going to be making a proper apology when we came in. But instead, when we got into the classroom, we saw something that made our blood run cold. Now, instead of one mannequin, there were two. And upon closer inspection of it, we realized the second lifelike doll looked exactly like Bradley Colt. Miss Shriver smiled in a sinister way as we looked toward her. Now, class, let's all turn our attention to page 42 of our history books. Bradley's mannequin stayed perfectly still the rest of class. After school, I overheard Miss Shriver tell his parents that there had been an accident during the lockdown drill. They swore up and down they were going to sue her and the school. I thought about telling them the truth of the strange evil that had overtaken him, but then I saw Miss Shriver smile again, and my heart dropped. "Don't forget the lesson of Lockdown Larry," she whispered to us as we left school. And I knew we were all wondering the same question. What the hell did she do to Bradley? The bell rings. Mr. Solomon says something to us about how this is not a drill, but honestly, I'm not really paying attention. You know how everything works so perfectly whenever you practice, but then the real thing occurs, and you feel like a chicken with your head cut off? As my friends are shuffling out toward the hallway, that's exactly how I feel. I don't recall what we are supposed to be doing, so I just keep quiet and follow the crowd as we head for the gym. I mentally wonder how many of us actually don't have a clue. What if we were just like lemmings being led off a cliff? In the gym, Principal McSchroeder is asking for different honor roll students to do a head count, make sure we are all here. I can't help but to notice the confusion on everyone's faces. We really weren't expecting this. Everyone is wondering, is this for real or just another drill? Of course, the teachers don't tell us. We're just supposed to obey and do as we're told. "Looks like everyone is accounted for," one girl tells the principal. Something about all of this feels wrong. Like a floodgate, the memories of all our drills are pouring into my head. We never came to this gym before. I can't help but to feel claustrophobic. What if this was some kind of trap? I look around. There's got to be at least 900 kids in here. And I realize that I don't feel safe in this crowd. This is not what we are supposed to be doing. I push through, mumbling excuses as I wriggle toward the back hallway. We always went to the closet bathroom and locked ourselves inside. Always, 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 I thought. And as I made it out toward the rear, I could hear myself think clearly again, and I pulled out my phone to text my best friend, Seth. "Get out of the gym, not safe," is all I can think of to say. I didn't really have an explanation to back up that statement, just a feeling. Then a soft ping made a few students look toward me as I was told to silence my phone, and I read a message that made my heart drop. "I'm not in the gym. What are you on about?" Now my heart is racing. The entire scene of getting here plays out in my mind again. As I look up, I realize the entire auditorium is staring at me. No one is blinking. The back of my neck feels sweaty as I cling to the wall. Where the hell am I? I see an emergency exit next to me and stumble through it. I ran like the devil himself was chasing me. I made it all the way to the east bathroom, the one I was supposed to be at, and ducked inside. When I saw familiar faces, I felt a rush of relief. "And where exactly have you been?" Mr. Solomon asked angrily. My mind flashed back to the gym. Who the hell did I just follow? "I can't explain right now, just follow me," I replied as I quickly led him toward the gym, frightened and worried about what we would see. We stepped inside as Mr. Solomon locked the door behind him. I turn around as he pulls a gun out from under his jacket. "You should have paid attention in class." "No, wait!" Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later.
It was my sophomore year of college. I woke up to get ready for my first period class. I glanced outside my window. There was a dense layer of fog, and I could barely see 20 feet in front of me. Something caught my attention in the corner of my eye. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A strange man was standing in the grass outside my dorm. He was wearing a black trench coat and had a wide-brimmed hat. It was too foggy to make out any facial features of the man. I thought it was strange because he was just standing there, staring in my direction. He didn't move. My fight or flight reflex kicked in. I shut the blinds and locked my door. My roommate Jake didn't have class until later in the morning, so he was still sleeping. I heard him rustling around in bed, and I assumed I must have woken him up. I tapped him on the shoulder to get his attention. He was less than happy that I disturbed him from his sleep. I told him about the strange man I saw. He pulled his sheets off from over him, stood up, and opened the blinds. We both looked outside the window. Jake said, "It was probably just a business major dressed up for class." I told him, "First of all, none of the business majors wear trench coats. Second of all, I've never seen a student wearing a black, wide-brimmed hat before." Jake jokingly said, "Maybe you saw someone from the Matrix." I wasn't amused by my roommate's humor this particular morning. I decided to just skip my first period class. I tried to get more sleep, but I couldn't. The strange man kept coming to my mind. I thought, why the hell was this guy just standing right outside my dorm? Why was he looking in my direction? And why was he dressed so weird? I decided to just wait for Jake to go to class, that way I could walk with him to campus. He noticed that I was waiting for him and poked fun at me. He said, "Do you need me to hold your hand too, honey?" I played it off that I just overslept and that the strange guy didn't faze me. Deep down, I was still creeped out and didn't even want to leave my dorm. Jake picked up his school bag and we headed out the door. Once we got outside, I noticed the fog didn't improve one bit. We started our walk towards campus. In order to get to the main buildings from my dorm, you had to travel through a long tunnel underneath a road. As we got closer to the tunnel, a bad feeling started to come over me. It was like a bad omen of what was to come. Finally, we made it to the tunnel. You couldn't see past the end of the tunnel due to the wall of fog. After getting about halfway through the tunnel, we noticed some movement at the far end. My roommate jokingly said, "Wouldn't it be funny if this was Mr. Trenchcoat?" I stayed silent. My heart rate started to increase. I really hoped this was just another student. The figure becomes more clear now. The wide-brimmed hat was the first thing to become visible through the dense fog. Jake and I abruptly stopped. I looked at Jake. He had a nervous look across his face. Jake was normally Mr. Tough Guy, and I've never seen him look this scared. Jake yelled, "Who's there?" The figure edged closer. Now we could see his black trench coat, but still couldn't make out his face. It was the exact same guy I saw earlier. There was about 20 feet separating us from the creepy guy at the end of the tunnel. Jake yelled again, "Who's there?" The guy didn't say a word. There was complete silence. I looked at Jake, waiting for him to do something. He was completely frozen. The sound of an alarm jolted Jake and I. The sound came from an emergency pole at the beginning of the tunnel. These poles were used in lockdowns or could be activated by students if they felt unsafe. I had never seen one go off before. The alarm was followed by a robotic voice. The strange man started to inch forward. Jack and I were both frozen in terror. I noticed something shiny in the man's hands. It was a large butcher's knife. I punched Jake, trying to knock him out of his trance, and yelled, "Run!" We darted backwards through the tunnel and back to our dorm. We locked the door and wedged our desks against the handle. Jake said, "What the hell was that?" The blinds were closed in my room, but I couldn't curb my curiosity. I barely moved the blinds to peek out of the top corner. There he was. The man in the trench coat was looking right at me. I turned my head and motioned Jake to come over. I looked outside again and the man was gone. Other students had reported this man, and that was the reason for the lockdown. I never saw him again, and pray to God I never will. I will never know if this was just a sick prank or a depraved man who actually wanted to harm people. It was my last day being a senior in high school. The year was 2016. The creepy clown phenomenon was in full swing. Creepy clowns seemed to be popping up all over the world. Most clown cases were harmless and just pranks. I was looking forward to signing yearbooks and saying my goodbyes to close friends. Who knew that my day was about to change in a way I could never imagine? Word got around that two seniors, Trevor and Noah, were planning a prank. They were the class clowns of our class, no pun intended. I received word that they were going to dress up as killer clowns and terrorize the teachers. I instantly thought it was a bad idea, but I wasn't against some good entertainment. I tried to find more information about the prank, but the only thing that kept coming up was fourth period lunch. I assumed that's when the shenanigans would start. Fourth period of lunch started. There was no sign of clowns. Finally, I saw a clown. He was just outside the main cafeteria doors, hiding behind a statue of our school mascot. His appearance was so creepy. I was really impressed. I didn't really think Trevor or Noah would be that creative. One by one, students began to notice the clown. Most of the guys thought it was amusing. Some girls, however, were fearful and started crying. I looked out one of the side windows and saw another clown. This had to be it, I thought. There they are, Trevor and Noah. It was right then that I saw two more clowns. They were hiding behind support poles in front of the cafeteria. I thought this was weird, but I just assumed more people had to be in on the prank. All of a sudden, the power went out. I thought, classic Trevor and Noah, always taking things too far. The school's PA system came on over the loudspeaker. Code Black. Follow full lockdown procedures. Repeat, Code Black. I wondered if I should tell one of the teachers about the prank. I thought this was getting out of hand and was going too far. Right then, the back door to the cafeteria busted open. It was Trevor and Noah. They were in their normal school clothes. They both had a ghostly white look across their face. Both were also drenched in sweat. Noah screamed, "Killer clowns! They're everywhere!" Half the cafeteria was dead silent. Another half laughed and thought this was a complete joke. Trevor said, "This is not a joke. Clowns chased us with real knives." I glanced outside again. There were two clowns at the main cafeteria doors. both were wielding knives. They slowly dragged their knives across the glass. Based on the loud screeching sound the knives made, I had no doubt they were real. I looked at both side exits, and clowns were there as well. There was no way out. I started to get nervous. Everyone was in disbelief as to what was happening. The door that Noah and Trevor ran through swung open again. I thought to myself, what idiots for not locking the door behind them. It was a creepy clown. His outfit and face paint was exactly like Pennywise from the movie It. He went over to a table full of girls and pulled a huge knife from his waistband. He began laughing in a high-pitched voice, almost as if he was crazed. I heard a loud rumbling noise. A huge SWAT emergency response vehicle pulled up right in front of the cafeteria. The creepy clown in the cafeteria dropped his knife and ran. The other clowns bolted as well. Only one clown ended up getting arrested, and it was a senior from a rival high school. I hope no one's last day of high school is as creepy as mine was. I was only in first grade, but my memory of that day is still crystal clear. My class had just finished lunch, and we went outside for recess. Our school had a massive playhouse. I was very rebellious at the time, and I hated when recess ended. When the teacher called all the students inside, I tried to see how long I could hide in the playhouse for. Eventually, I heard nothing but silence. I thought there was no way my teacher didn't notice me missing. I stood up and looked around. Sure enough, there was no one in sight. It felt awesome being alone without any adult supervision. After a few minutes by myself, I thought I should go inside. I was worried the longer I stayed outside, the harder it would be to explain myself to my teacher. Right when I was about to jump off the playhouse, alarms started to go off. Startled, I hid inside the playhouse. I was too young to know what a lockdown was, but I knew something wasn't right. I stood up again and looked around. I made eye contact with a guy right outside the playground's fence. He was wearing all black. He started to try and scale the fence. That's when I noticed he had a gun. My fight or flight response kicked in. My instincts told me to run. I jumped off the playhouse and ran towards the exterior door. I tried to pull on the handle, but it was locked. I heard a thud behind me. I looked over my shoulder. The creepy man had just landed on my side of the fence and was headed in my direction. I began screaming. I started to kick in and punch the door out of desperation. Finally, a teacher opened the door and yanked me inside. I noticed the teacher who pulled me in was Mrs. Jones. I was in her class the previous year. She led me to a classroom full of students and told me to crouch down behind a desk. I heard someone banging on the exterior door. I thought this had to be the guy with the gun. The banging stopped for a brief second. I then heard the sound of a body slamming into the door. A few seconds of silence, then another slam. I waited, expecting to hear a third slam. It didn't come. About 20 seconds went by, then I heard a loud boom. The guy must have hit the door running at full speed. I heard the door swing open and hit the wall. The intruder was in the school. He started banging on our classroom door. With one kick, our door swung open. Mrs. Jones stood in between us and the intruder. The man pointed the gun at her head and yelled, "Where is that bitch?" Mrs. Jones said, "Sir, I don't know what you're talking about, but if you could just..." Before she could finish her sentence, the man said, "Where is Miss Julie?" I shuddered. Miss Julie was my teacher. Mrs. Jones was silent. The man said, "So that's how we're gonna play this, huh?" The man violently grabbed Mrs. Jones and pulled her out into the hallway. The last thing I saw was the man forcing Mrs. Jones down the hallway towards Miss Julie's room. We all sat in silence for what seemed like an eternity. Then we heard a loud followed by another pop. I knew right then that Miss Julie was gone.
It was sophomore year of high school. Prom was about 2 months away. I was pretty good at football, so I guess you could say I was in the more popular crowd. I never really forced relationships, and women usually just came to me. I had heard from other people that Sarah wanted to go to prom with me. Sarah was in the same grade as me. She was such a beautiful girl that even seniors wanted to date her. I knew that Sarah had just gotten out of a long relationship with another guy named Trent. He was a freshman at our high school and was a little off in a way that's hard to describe. There was gossip in our school that there was something mentally wrong with him. Because of the recent breakup between Sarah and Trent, I didn't really want to ask her to prom. All of Sarah's friends badgered me relentlessly to go to prom with her. They assured me everything would be fine. Even my guy friends told me I needed to grow a pair and ask her to prom. Finally, one afternoon, I intercepted Sarah in the parking lot and asked her to prom. She was delighted, and I went home feeling like I was on top of the world. My feeling of euphoria faded when I opened a Snapchat notification on my phone. It was Trent. He was trying to add me on Snapchat. I thought I couldn't just ignore him, so I added him back. Immediately, I received a Snapchat message from him. It read, "So, I heard you asked my girlfriend Sarah to prom." I quickly replied, "You guys broke up a month ago." He didn't respond back to me. I dreaded running into Trent the next day at school. I just felt so bad for Trent. I started to think that it wasn't even worth going to prom with Sarah over this nonsense. The next day at school, I didn't see Trent anywhere. I usually passed him on the way to a few of my classes. I thought it was odd not seeing him. I asked around and found out that he never made it to school. I was relieved that there was no chance of running into him. My relief was crushed by a Snapchat notification. It was Trent. This time, he sent me a video. I didn't even want to watch it. I tried to think of what the video could be, but nothing came to my mind. An hour went by, and I finally decided to watch it. The video was of a shooting range. Trent was recording in one and had a pistol in the other. The caption said, "This is you." He proceeded to fire multiple shots into a target about 20 feet in front of him. I was shocked. I thought I was in a movie and that this couldn't be real. I told my friends what I had witnessed, and eventually word got around to the whole school. I was called down to the dean's office. Multiple teachers and faculty were there. I told them everything I had seen. After telling them my story, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I thought to myself, oh no, here we go again. I pulled my phone out. It was Trent again. I told everyone in the room that Trent sent me another Snapchat video. They all gathered around in anticipation. I opened it. The video was of a crematorium. The footage showed a body on a conveyor belt on its way to an incinerator. The caption said, "This is you." Everyone in the room, including myself, were horrified. Immediately, the principal put the whole school on lockdown and called the police. Trent was later arrested by the police. Trent was never charged with anything, but our high school expelled him. I figured out that Trent's grandparents actually owned a crematorium, and that's where the footage came from. I still ended up taking Sarah to prom. She was just too beautiful to pass up. I never did receive another Snapchat from Trent, and I hope I never do. The year was 2011. I was in 8th grade at the time. My homeroom class had just finished lunch and were on our way to 6th period math class. The cafeteria and the main school building were separated, so we always had our homeroom teacher walk with us after lunch. We had to walk about a quarter mile outside to the main school building. As we were walking, I noticed our teacher received a call on his cell phone. It was a very brief call. After the call, I noticed that all the blood rushed away from his face. He told us in a frantic voice that something serious is happening and we need to hurry to a classroom. He started to jog with all of us in quick pursuit. Our homeroom teacher was usually a pretty laid-back guy, so I knew something wasn't right. He led us to an empty classroom that I had never been in before. He told all of us to get low and hide beneath the desks. He proceeded to cover up the windows, lock the doors, and turn off the lights. I crouched under one of the desks in the back of the room. A kid named Michael sat down next to me. I thought to myself, come on, anybody but Michael. Michael was a strange kid. He was really shy, and no one really talked to him. He also smelled like rotten eggs, which didn't help. A lot of my classmates made fun of him. My friends often joked around that Michael would be the one to shoot up our school. I was always kind to Michael, but I never went out of my way to talk to him. After a few minutes sitting next to Michael, I wanted to gag. The smell was so horrid. I looked around, trying to find any open space to scoot over to. It was at that moment Michael whispered to me, "Hey, you don't have to sit next to me." I whispered back, "I was just looking for more room to spread out my legs, that's all." He replied, "I know you were trying to get away from me. Nobody likes me." I didn't respond. He continued to whisper, "But don't worry, you've always been kind to me. You're not on the list." I shuddered in fear. The list? What did he mean by the list? I asked Michael if he had anything to do with this. He just shrugged and smiled at me. Michael was sitting with his legs fully extended, with his hands pressed against the floor behind his back. He moved his legs inward, probably to get more comfortable. It was at that moment I saw the butt of a gun slide outwards from his pants pocket. Michael quickly caught the gun and pushed it back in. He looked around to see if anyone noticed. I quickly glanced away and pretended I didn't see anything. My heart was racing. I didn't know what to do. I thought of tackling Michael, or even texting for help on my phone. I also wondered if there were more people other than Michael involved. The answer to my question was answered. I heard the sound of an exterior door into the school being forced open. Footsteps started charging down the hallway. It sounded like multiple people. My heart dropped. I thought these had to be the other students involved in the plot. The footsteps were getting closer. They stopped right outside our door. I tried turning the knob every which way. I thought, this is it, the end of my short life. The door was kicked open, and a full SWAT team rushed in. I looked at Michael, and he had a surprised look on his face, as if this wasn't what he was expecting. Long story short, a student had made a threat to the school. The authorities found out it was Michael by tracing an email he sent to one of our teachers. The email talked about a plot to shoot up the school. Michael went to a juvenile detention center, and I have no idea what happened to him. Our principal told everyone that Michael had a fake gun on him. I thought there was no way it was fake. I believed the principal knew the truth, but didn't want the public to know. To this day, I still wonder if there were more students involved in the plot. I guess I'll never know. It was the middle of 3rd period math. I had just finished my test. I was done before anyone else, so I decided to use the restroom. The bathroom was right across the hall, but it was closed for repairs. The next closest bathroom was on the 2nd floor. On my way there, the bell rang. I thought that was odd, because there was still about 20 minutes of class left. The bell never rang in the middle of class like this. After the bell rang, an announcement came on over the PA system. "We are entering lockdown. This is not a drill. Please follow all procedures." My heart nearly stopped. I froze, and I didn't know what to do. I could hear the faint sound of sirens in the background. I knew that going back to my classroom wasn't an option, because the doors would be locked. I decided to continue to the 2nd floor bathroom. I arrived at the bathroom, but I realized the main door didn't have a lock. I left and ran further down the hall. I could see the classrooms turning off their lights and covering their windows. At the end of the hallway, I turned the corner and saw a janitor's closet. Now, the sirens were much louder. I decided the janitor's closet was my only option. I pulled the handle and sighed in relief as it was unlocked. I closed the door behind me and made sure it was locked. I turned the lights off and crouched down in the far corner of the room. The only light I could see was from the bottom of the door. The sirens were loud now and seemed to be right outside the school. Suddenly, the sirens turned off. Then, I heard footsteps. A lot of footsteps. The footsteps led up the stairs and stopped in the hallway right outside my hiding spot. I heard the sound of radio chatter and figured these had to be police officers. One guy in particular sounded like he was in charge. He said, "Okay, are we in position?" Another guy responded, "Yes, sir. The suspect is here in the building. C team is in position on the other side of campus as instructed, and B team is covering all the exterior exits. There's no way he'll be able to escape this building." The guy in charge said, "Good. He must not escape. It's my fault he's here, and it's my duty to deal with him." Over the next couple minutes, I heard the muffled chatter of police officers talking to each other. I thought maybe the situation died down and I could leave the closet and go back to class. That's when it all happened. I heard one of the officers yell, "Don't move and put your hands in the air." A moment later, I heard what sounded like guns being drawn. About 10 seconds of silence went by, and then I heard a loud scream that came from the end of the hallway. It wasn't a normal scream. I had never heard anything like it before, and hoped to never hear that sound again. I pressed my ear against the closet door and heard a distant whimpering sound. It was the sound of a crying man. I then heard him say, "Please, don't take me back there. I don't want to go back. You guys won't get away with this. What you guys are doing to us is illegal, and everyone will find out about it." The man in charge said, Now, Jim, you signed the contract. That was the deal for your early prison release. You need to come back to the facility and finish up your treatments." I thought to myself, deal for your prison release? Finish up your treatments? What the heck? I heard the footsteps leaving. They walked past my hiding spot. I cracked open the door just to check out what was happening. I saw the backs of 5 men. The 2 men in the middle were carrying a man in a hospital gown. I assumed that was Jim. All 5 men were wearing black suits. They certainly didn't look like police officers. I peeked outside the window and saw 5 blacked out SUVs. I ran back to my classroom and told my classmates what I saw and heard. They thought I was crazy. Our teacher told us that the lockdown was just a false alarm and nothing had happened. When I got home later that day, there was nothing about it on the news. I have no idea what happened or what I saw that day.
Thanks for watching. You can watch another scary animation here. Also, don't forget to subscribe and to hit that notification bell to stay tuned for future videos.